I got out of the Marine Corps, I did signals intelligence, and when I got out, I wanted to do something with my art. So I immediately got out of the Marine Corps and I started doing comic book submissions, sending them off to Marvel Comics and DC Comics, and it didn't work out. I just got a whole bunch of rejection letters. And then I also tried to do the t-shirt design business. I had the idea for it because I had been asked to do unit designs for my units while I was in. And I did such a good job, I saw people ordering 2 to 3 shirts per person in a unit. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And I thought, well, if they're ordering 2 to 3 per person in a unit, there are this many platoons, this many companies, this many battalions, that there might be a business idea. So I got out and I tried to do something with my art. Like I said, I tried to do the comic book work and I tried to do the t-shirt work, and I immediately failed at both of them. I was so used to having success in the Marine Corps because the Marine Corps sets you up for success, right? They're going to send you to a school, they want you to graduate, right? There's no safety net when you fail in business. Now mind you, I started small, it wasn't a big resounding failure, but it just didn't get off the ground. I was like, well, I'm not making really any money off of my art, so I tried to just get a job. And I thought, well, where can I get a job where I can gain some experience? So I went to Kinko's first. It's like the fast food of like the graphic design industry. I think it was called Ditto's back then, that's how old I am. But they got my resume and didn't give me a call. So I was like, well, maybe I need to set my sights a little lower. So I was like, well, maybe Baskin Robbins, right? And they didn't give me a call. I went on, my wife was in the Navy still, so we were on Hawaii. We were right by Pearl Harbor and Kaneohe Bay and Schofield. So I was like, well, I'll just try to get a job bagging groceries because at this point we need some money. And they didn't call. And then, and my wife, she was a shift worker. She did signals intelligence on Schofield. So she would just clip out job ads for me and put them on the refrigerator. And so I'd get up in the morning and I'd check whatever ad she put for me on the refrigerator. And I got one morning and I saw the ad to be the Chuck E. Cheese mouse on the refrigerator. And at that point I thought, maybe I should use my GI Bill benefits and go to school. So that's what I did. I went ahead and I signed up for classes because at the time I was computer illiterate. Even though I could draw pretty well, when I was getting interviews with people for graphic design and art, they asked me if I knew Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator and that sort of thing. And the answer was no. And there is this notion that there's an anti-military bias by some people, and I don't know what other people's experience has been. I can tell you I've never run into it. People, when I got in front of them, they seemed to want to hire me, I just wasn't qualified. In the civilian world, people expect you to show up already qualified. And that was one of the big differences that I got in the transition. So I went to school, I fixed my computer literacy problem, and then I didn't have a problem after that. So I ended up doing my own graphic design business, basically out of necessity because I had all these skills and no job. So, but having worked 2 jobs and everybody just kind of cross-pollinated, I knew a lot of people and they needed graphic design work, so I started doing websites and brochures and that sort of thing. And along the way, people kept asking me to do t-shirt designs. You know, I'd have a friend that was my roommate who was going to like the basic school on Quantico. It's like, hey, you need platoon shirts, so I do them. A friend of mine who was stationed in England was like, hey, I need some shirts, so I went ahead and I did the shirts. And this kept happening over and over again. And eventually one day I just said, hey, people seem to be interested in these t-shirts, let me just put an ad up and see if anybody cares. And this one guy, Staff Sergeant Arredondo, back in 2003, sent me an email, says, hey, I've got this shirt for Postal Affairs that would be really cool. You want to go ahead and do this shirt for us? I said, sure, absolutely. He's like, yeah, we're probably going to do like 50. So I did the design, and I collaborated with him on it, and I changed like the Marine to like a bulldog, and I said, hey, it'd be great if we put it on a stamp and we put on the bottom says, no, nobody goes postal like the Marines. He's like, yeah, that's great, let's do that. Well, we sold not 50, we ended up selling thousands. Like it was getting shipped all over the Marine Corps. Anybody who was attached, you know, like to Postal Affairs for anything, they were getting the shirt, and it just circulated everywhere. And other units started to get the word out, because like every t-shirt ended up being an advertisement for our company, because people would look at it and go, hey, where'd you get that shirt? And it just kind of word of mouth started to catch on. Not like wildfire. I mean, this is over like a 12-month period. And then eventually I got a call from officer candidate school, and I remember they wanted to see me November 10th, the Marine Corps birthday in 2004. So I went down and I walked into the squad bay, and I figured that they had heard about me from somebody locally. But when I walked into the squad bay, they had a couple of my shirts like on the racks in the squad bay, and what had happened was these shirts had been all around the world and come all the way back to Quantico. Like one of the gunnery sergeants had gotten one of the shirts in Iraq. I was like, well, that's again, and one of them wasn't even my shirt. It was like a knockoff shirt. It was a shirt that was made in Korea with my design that was poorly printed, and I had to disavow it because I was like, this is my artwork. It's not my printing. I did not do this. I've seen since then. That was 2004. I've seen every class come through officer candidate school for the last 11 years almost. This November 10th will be 11 years. But then I've done like units in Iraq, units in Afghanistan, Japan. Just the word got out, and I've been doing t-shirt designs ever since. So what started as just a couple of t-shirt designs, I think I'm over 2,500 now, that I've done for mostly the Marine Corps, but I've done some of the Army and the Air Force, and the Navy, especially corpsmen, over the last 11 years, and still going strong. So, so that's my business. This is kind of how I started it. It wasn't a master plan. The interesting thing about what I do is from an art perspective, and I didn't realize this right away, but what it is that I'm cataloging is the psychology of warfighters, right? Like, so if you look at the t-shirt designs that I've done panoramically, they tell a story. Like we did, like right from the invasion of Iraq right till like when everybody left. If you line them up panoramically, you can tell when Marines are amped up, when they're bored, when morale's high, when it's low. It's just a t-shirt design, but it's really not, right? Like this is something that they all wear together as a unit. It builds their unit cohesion, helps them come together, and helps them get in the right mindset of whatever it is that they're doing, right? Like, so if you have a unit that's going in for heavy combat, that's reflected in the design, because there was a while during the beginning of Afghanistan where there wasn't a whole lot of heavy fighting, and along the way that changed, and that you would see that changed in the designs as to what Marines were asking for. So that's probably the best part of what I do, is I get to collaborate with all these Marines, and again, to a lesser extent, like, you know, soldiers and that's fine. It takes a long time. Like, you can't expect to like do something and in 6 months you're having immediate success. It takes for somebody like Benjamin Franklin, for instance, when he invented the lightning rod, that was a 10-year process. The Wright brothers in the airplane, took between like 5 and 10 years for them to solve the problem from when they first decided to tackle it to when they actually were able to do it. Even somebody like Bill Gates, him and Paul Allen started collaborating 10 years before they were cash flow positive with Microsoft. They started collaborating as kids. They failed in their first business. It was a business called Trafo Data, which did data for some sort of traffic type things for, I think, police departments. Again, over 2,500 designs, and I've talked to everybody from snipers to air conditioning mechanics. I've talked, and because I don't have rank, I can talk to any rank, right? Like, so I can talk to lance corporals and lieutenant colonels just as easily. And as a result, I grew up around the Marine Corps. I spent 5 years in the Marine Corps, but I get to see it in a very different way now. Again, I've seen all the classes coming through OCS for the last 11 years. I've seen it from a dependent perspective. Both my brothers are Marines, and I've seen it from the other side. My wife was in the Navy, and then I've just met so many people. And so through the webcomic, and it's fiction, but I want it to be culturally authentic, as authentic as I can make it.